All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Harsh Truth Podcast. I am here today with a good friend of mine. Unfortunately, Jeremy could not make it in today. He had some other stuff come up, unfortunately. So, filling in for him today, I'm going to let him introduce himself and kind of give you a rundown on what he's all about. And we'll move on from there and get into the topics we were going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and do that. You want to introduce yourself, man?
Hey everybody, I'm Damon, also known to Boston as Disengage. We met somehow online. I think it was YouTube or some pretty weird stuff like that. Pretty much I'm just full-time 21-year-old that's employed and play some games every now and then. And I'm pretty easygoing, but yeah, that's about it.
Do you want to kind of just give them a rundown where you're from and all that stuff?
Oh yeah, as we found out this morning, time zones aren't a good thing. I'm in Dunedin, New Zealand. I'm a wee bit far away.
Just a little bit.
just a wee bit. We sort of got time zone conversion wrong, and what I thought would have been sort of a 10:30 a.m. starts end up turning to be about 7:30. So
I know.
yeah,
It
worked
didn't
out
work
so well.
I guess we both screwed up on that part. But yeah, so what we wanted to actually get into today, so some of the things I wanted to talk about, I just wanted to get your opinion on some things. So, with you not being from the United States, you'll have a different outlook on some things. So I just wanted to get your opinion on Donald Trump in general winning the presidential elect. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know American politics too well. It gets blasted over here in the media, mainstream media, and our mainstream media sort of had this whole Trump shouldn't win, Trump isn't going to win sort of side to it, and, well, for whatever reason it was. And to be perfectly honest, for now, I'm just more interested in seeing what he's actually going to go through with, what he's going to do. He may not end up being a bad president overall. I could think of possibly worse things that could have happened that haven't happened, and this will come down to conspiracy theories, so I don't want to go into them too much. But anything's possible. But the thing is, I kind of like his approach in a way, because he's sort of got that outlandish sort of say what I want as it happens and not sort of think about it till later when needed. And depending on what happens, that could either be a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah, it could end up anyway. And going off sort of the whole conspiracy theory feelings, if Hillary got in, there's that whole thing there of whatever's in the secret little book of secrets that, if their family beforehand has done a whole heap of unnice things to people and had people assassinated or whatever reason. He may not, but then in saying that, he's that sort of quick hothead that he could do just about anything as well.
Yeah, and I think you're right there. I think that's what concerns people, is because he's a hothead and he kind of just flies off the handle and just goes for the jugular. He doesn't really think too much about it, and that can be worrisome. And I can understand why people would be worried. But how do you feel about the way people reacted? I don't know if you saw any of the inauguration yesterday. The way people acted out, there was some rioting. They were setting cars on fire and breaking windows and, attacking the cops. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that was necessary?
I haven't seen any of the proper footage. I've sort of seen stuff scrolling through Facebook at work, just like posts and whatnot. To be fairly honest, I think everyone that's sort of protesting about him and doing all that sort of stuff now is just automatically assuming the worst. Like, if I would say if he was doing stupid shit later on, maybe that would be a thing, but destroying property that isn't your own is just a bit stupid, and I highly doubt that actually anything will be properly done. I think if people are unsure, that'll get covered by them, hopefully, maybe. And
yeah.
So, yeah,
So
I just feel it's stupid.
Don't you think? Now, if they were so against Donald Trump and they're worried about what he's going to do to the United States, and all that stuff. All right, so let's just put it this way: do you think that makes them look any better by going out there and destroying public property and attacking cops and setting stuff on fire and just acting out in the way that they did? Now, how does that make them look as a citizen of the United States? Does that make them look any better acting out in that way? I mean, what do you think about that?
I, I find it's a bit extreme what they do. You guys seem to have really explosive protests, if I can put it that way. Like compared to here, most of our protests are mainly peaceful. There may be a wee breakout of just one or two people losing their minds. So when over here, when I see stuff on the scale that happens over there when it comes to protests and when they go horribly wrong, it doesn't make them look any better in my opinion. It just makes them look like hotheads that have gone too far. And so far, I don't think Trump's done that yet. He's probably said too many things on Twitter, but yeah.
Exactly, and I think what it does is it actually distorts the image of, people in the United States, because that just gives off the wrong message, especially to, other countries, and not even just that, but the people here in the United States, other people, that sends the wrong message. I think, violence does not solve anything. It just makes matters worse. And I actually talked about this yesterday in the podcast that I did, talking about, the inauguration and just the way people were talking about Trump in general, in the comment section, just saying that they hoped he got shot and, all this crazy shit.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I mean, people are just taking it to the extreme. Now, I can understand if somebody's unhappy with the outcome of the election. Okay, if you don't like Donald Trump, that is like I said, it's your opinion, and everybody's got their opinion, and everybody's got that free right to vote for who they want. But when you take it to the next level, where you're wishing death on somebody and trying to act out in violence, when these people supposedly are the ones that always protest and want peace and all that stuff, but then they're out there doing that, and it just seems like hypocritical. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's the pot calling the kettle black. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do know what you mean. The only big major difference is if wanted, Trump's got access to weapons and whatnot, that he would just send the army out and do whatever. So the damage scale is a lot different, but violence doesn't solve anything. It just causes more problems. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm trying to word this. I know this is meant to be the harsh truth.
Just go ahead and lay it out on the line, man. Whatever you're thinking, it doesn't matter here. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, I know I can. I'm just trying to word it together in my head before saying it. Just causing more damage doesn't make anyone look any better. It kind of makes, in a way, American citizens look like some sort of stereotype of just full-out aggressive people, even though at times it's just a small amount of people. But because something big's happening in, where it was yesterday, Washington D.C., or pretty sure it was there.
Yeah.
It got a whole heap of mainstream coverage, and the fact that, sure, you don't agree with what's happened, you can't do sweet jack shit about it, really, for now. Or you can if something else happens, assassinations. Some people, I've heard some people going, how long is he going to last before it happens? And it's like, you don't know. It may or may not happen. You don't know what's going on. No one does. You just got to wait and see, because he may end up being an alright president. He might be just a bit of a hothead on words or doing interviews and on Twitter, but that could just be a good thing or a bad thing. It just depends on who takes what too seriously.
Yeah, you have to wait. I mean, that's what people, I was trying to explain that yesterday too, is just, he just got into office. He's got 4 years to, do his thing, and, he may or may not do well. And he should be giving the opportunity to at least have a chance to do something good. My opinion, I voted for him because that's who I thought was best for the United States, because I wanted to change. And I felt like with him being somebody that didn't have too much ties to the political scene, and being somebody that's a businessman and having the experience in that aspect, might bring a different, element to what he could do for the United States as far as like negotiations and maybe, alliances and stuff like that. You never know. And I think that maybe it's going to take a couple of years. It's not going to happen right away. He's not going to be able to change everything overnight. Obviously, it takes time to do those things. But we saw that with Obama. 8 years he was in office, and he did things, but it did take some time. Especially with the House, people don't seem to understand the president is not the only one that makes the decisions. It has to go through the House, and it has to be approved by everybody else. They can't just make a decision and say, well, this is what's going to happen, and that's it. It doesn't work that way, So there's a Senate, and it has to go through, and it has to be voted and all that stuff. So I think people lose sight of that, though. Sometimes they think it's just the president's decision, and that's it. Another question that I wanted to ask you today, too, was, what do you think is the biggest thing that the United States needs to change for, like, I'd say, their image, if you had to say so?
Oh, well, there's probably a few things. Over here, when we get, because I work at a gas station, we'll get quite a few American customers come in, and I'm not sure if it's just a select few that do this, but I've also actually had a conversation with someone else on PSN that I play with about this, and a lot of Americans come across as loud and obnoxious.
Yep.
And I've sort of seen this since I started working at the gas station, and they'll come in, their phone will go off, and they will talk so bloody loudly. Like, the gas station, mate, it's only a small one. So you can easily hear people from across the store. And there was a fellow, I want to say about 3 or 4 months ago, that came in, and I could barely hear the lady that I was serving simply because of how loud he was talking on the phone. But it may just be down to him or a select few. It could just be the way they are, so you never know. But then when it comes to sort of more things that could be changed to change the view of the public of the outside world from, well, other countries. To be fairly honest, I think what would be handy is, I think America needs to stop sending people into, meaning forces into different countries for whatever reason. Like, it seems that something small happens and then you've got half your army over there doing something. I know the war against terror is something that's needed. That one's definitely a must. But just sending like a whole heap of troops over to somewhere for something little is just stupid. Like, there's no immediate threat. It's not like they're going over to you and invading the US.
You're
and
absolutely
then,
right.
And then
I
you send like
absolutely agree with
half your army force at once. Whether something happens or not, it's just doesn't look good. It brings a whole heap of tension, and sort of like, if there's like some sort of rebel force over there where you guys end up sending your troops, all they have to do is just turn around, or just be actually, it would work with any country. You just turn around and all of a sudden you're getting shot from behind, and that's the build up of tension just by having your troops over there. Won't help any situation over there, whether it's political between the civilians and whoever's in charge at the time. It doesn't help there at all. And I'd say maybe stop having a few hotheads in the streets causing riots, because I won't take away from what they do. They do a good job of destruction. So that if they can, they should go into the army as demolition crew or something, or explosives personnel.
Yeah.
That would be bloody handy for them.
It makes sense what you're saying, and I get that, because this is something I've had on my mind, many times. They need to stop stretching the troops and stretching their army out so thin. They're trying to be in too many places at too many, just too many times. It's too much, and then we find ourselves with an issue where, look at the United States, the kind of predicament we're in right now. We're in debt, big time. I mean, it's just the way it is, whether people want to face it or not. The United States is in a huge amount of debt, and I think it's partly because of that reason. And there's a lot of things that are going on in other countries that have nothing to do with us, and we have no business being over there. Just for an example, Vietnam is one of the biggest ones. That had nothing to do with us. And the United States felt like they had to get involved. And we saw how well that worked out for us. So, I mean, if they took a step back and said, hey, I understand they want to help people when there's like, tragedies and stuff happens and they send people over to help out, that's one thing. But if another country is having a fight with another country and that's between them, and then I think we should just stay out of it because it's got nothing to do with us. I understand the United States likes to be the one that comes in and wants to save everybody, but it can't always be like that, especially now with the way things are. I don't know how things are over in New Zealand. I mean, how does the government run things there? Like, how is it different from the United States?
Well, over here, quickly, something I want to say about previous, but just before I go into how it's run over here. It's kind of like the US. With the US, it sort of seems like they're going to go over, fight, take over. Well, not take over, or get rid of whatever's not in their favour or what they feel's not right, even though it's not their problem. But I think our army was sent over to Iraq simply as peacekeepers. They would walk armed, but they would never they were only there for their protection if they were fired upon, but they would never instigate an actual fight, or they weren't meant to. But that was their only role, was to try and sort of keep calm between the civilians, I think, and what was going on over there.
Yeah.
And it's not like we were going over there armed to actually go into a fight. It was more armed for self-defense, really, and to make sure everything was right in the whole civilian end, I think it is. I'm not too sure on how it all was meant to be, but that's how I'm pretty sure they were sent over as. Yeah. And then
it's just to ensure order, pretty much.
Pretty much, just try and keep the chaos as less as possible. But yeah, even though I think the US troops were over there, it almost seemed like almost every couple of days in the media that there was some sort of big fight happened between them and whoever it was. And yet, anytime we'd see us, it would be because we got fired upon. But then saying that mainstream media, that can be twisted around any way it wants. We could have fired first, I don't know.
Yeah. It's one thing if you're going over there to keep the peace, that makes sense, but a lot of the times when the United States goes over, it's not just to keep the peace. And we all know that.
Trigger happy gunfire sort of stuff.
It doesn't take much, that's for sure. So getting into the other question that I asked you about how things are run over there in New Zealand compared to the United States and how your government handles certain issues, you want to just go ahead and, get a rundown on that?
Well, over here, I think the easiest one to put it up with, recently, our former Prime Minister, which is essentially President, John Key, he brought up a great idea to change our country's flag. So, sort of to break, because we don't really do, I think in sports we give England too much shit. We never want to be beaten by them, and I think they go for anyone for their team and whatnot. But we were given 3 new flag choices that were made by people of New Zealand, which was, I find okay. There was one of them that wasn't too bad, but I felt there was too much heritage with our country's flag, like World War One, Two. Those are the flag is what our soldiers fought for. Even though we weren't in direct danger, but it was because we were tied to England and the Queen against the Union Jacks, same with Australia and I think a couple of other island countries. That's why we went over there, was to help defend Britain, because they were essentially the motherland for us, I think. But then when it comes to the whole how stuff gets done, the idea was initially brought up, and also it went under a referendum, which cost I think the New Zealand taxpayer 26 million, which for just a flag change. Yeah, and the way it was done was in probably the worst order possible. You had to, I think it was, you had to do a vote on the flag, which one you preferred, and then I think another 6 months later, they brought out another one to choose between the top two, which luckily had our original flag in there. And then whether you wanted it changed, yes or no, when it should have been the other way around. Should have been, do you want the flag changed first, and then those other options? But
yeah.
But we knew sort of had an idea John Key was going to drop out pretty soon, and so we sort of expected something stupid to come out along the way. But to be fairly honest, I haven't done many things. I think it gets, the way it works over here mainly is an idea will be brought up in whatever it is in the beehive. That's where all the politicians meet.
They make the decision there, yeah. So you mean to tell me that one flag was $26 million?
Supposedly, well, just for the idea of changing it, and then
For the idea, okay.
well, I
That
think it
seems like
was,
a
and
lot
then
of money.
and then to print off everything, I think that's what it is. But I don't see how it does cost 26 million just for a 2 piece of paper vote, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think how it ends up working, because that's just really the only thing that I've got to go voting, other than sort of going for, just doing the whole who do you want as prime minister and main party, because we've got Labour and National over here. They're the two main ones. I'm not sure how they sort of work together with comparing them to the parties you have over there in the States. But Labour sort of seems more for the people, and National seems more for the corporation side of things.
So how does your healthcare work over there in New Zealand? Is it free, or how does that work?
It's not free. I managed to get a bit of free stuff when I was younger, because surprisingly I could get under, because my dad, he's got a severely damaged back and neck after a car accident, I think in 2004. We went to this place that ended up being relatively free when it came to medical stuff. Like, you'd go in, you'd have a talk to the doctor or whoever it was on at the time, and they would sort out stuff for you, and generally was covered by, all my stuff seemed to be covered by ACC, which I can't remember what it stands for. It's just a wee government organisation, I think, because our taxes go towards it. So I guess in a way, depending on what's happened, that covers you. But yeah, there's no proper sort of thing for medical care. I think there might be something
like stable set in stone.
No, I don't think so. But then, in saying that, I haven't had an injury sort of that hasn't been covered by ACC, because all mine have come under accident. I sort of split my head open and got probably the world's one of the world's most expensive medical glue stuck on the top of my head. But that was all covered because it was an accident, and I was on a school sort of course thing at the time, which probably helped a wee bit. So that probably covered by the school just as much as ACC. But I'm not sure. If we do another sort of podcast on this, I might actually ask my grandmother and grandfather a bit more about it, because at the moment he's going through a battle with cancer, which we're pretty sure is going to end up being terminal. But at the moment he's just going, and he and a farmer.
I'm very sorry to hear about that.
My
family has been traumatically affected by cancer. You know, I've lost most of my family to that too. It's a very nasty disease, and it's I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Let's put it that way.
Oh no. No matter how much I hate, there's been people that have hated over the years, but going through cancer is not something I've never sort of wished upon them, or never even really brought up as an idea in my head. And at times I can actually think of being a pretty dark person at times, so especially when I get into a really bad mood. But at the moment he's going through the chemo and stuff, so it's probably not a silly idea for me to ask them what's sort of happening with how it all gets paid for and whatnot. But I have a feeling it comes out of their pockets. So,
and we can definitely do another show about this. Because this is another whole huge topic we could get into too. We could go on forever about healthcare. There's so many flaws and different things that could be covered on that.
Yeah,
But the United States in general, like with us over here, obviously our healthcare is not free, and it's very expensive. It's very expensive in general just to have health insurance. You have to
yeah,
pay for it. Every couple weeks it comes out of your check, and it's expensive. And not even that, but it doesn't even cover all of it. So that's another thing that kills you. If you go in an
yeah.
ambulance here, just the ambulance ride alone could cost you over $1,000.
Oh,
Okay,
far out.
and it doesn't even matter if you're 5 minutes away from the hospital. If that ambulance comes and picks you up and takes you to the emergency room, that's $1,000 for the ambulance ride. You go to the emergency room, they automatically charge you about what, $550 just for that, and that's just the initial. It's not even the doctor coming in to examine you to see what's going on.
It's
If they
just
have to run
rocking
any
up and saying,
tests.
"Hi, I need help."
Yeah. So I mean, in general, you have to try your best to not get sick and not get injured because you're going to get screwed. And the way it works here is that if you don't have health insurance, you get fined at the end of the year. So let's say if I say, well, fuck that, I'm not going to pay for health insurance because it's too expensive and I can't afford it. Well, if you do that, at the end of the year when you go to file your taxes, you get fined about $1,500, I believe it is. So you can do whatever you want. You don't have to pay for it. But at the end of the year, that's $1,500 that's going to come out of your pocket, whether you like it or not. So you're screwed either way. And it sucks. It really does, especially for people that really can't afford it. And if they're a single parent and they have kids, sometimes they'll get help. Like here we have Mass Health. It's a free healthcare thing that, helps people that really can't afford it. But it's
Yeah,
hard to get it, so
yeah.
let's say I'm not trying to be an asshole. I don't want to sound like an asshole saying this, but it is the truth. And Mass Health, or like the free healthcare, it's harder for me, someone that was born here in the United States, to get it than it is for, say, somebody else that comes from another country here and then they go for it. They're going to get it before I will. And like I said, I'm not trying to say that, I'm not saying that to sound like an asshole, but it's the truth, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. When it comes to healthcare and stuff, I can understand why the US do it the way they do, because there's a lot of I think the way the laws are written over there, it's easier for a company to sue the government than almost anywhere else, unless it's maybe North Korea. But I think they'll just solve that issue with a gunshot. But there is. My father was telling me about there's a country somewhere in Europe where they are taxed extremely heavily, but everything is covered for whenever something happens. You have something go wrong with a tooth that needs to get medically seen by a
I
dentist.
think that's in
That'll,
England, isn't it?
I'm not sure. They might have a similar system. I think what Dad said was something like Finland or Sweden or something like that. But your tax is heavily done, but no matter what happens, if you have an accident, you need to go to the hospital. If you've paid enough, that automatically comes out of what's been taxed by you. It sort of like goes into its own wee account.
Oh,
And
okay. Yeah.
so you don't have to pay probably over time. They're probably pretty lenient in how long you have to pay it back by. But you'd be able to pay it back within, well, what would take you guys probably a couple of years of hard work to maybe 10 years to pay off would probably take them probably half a year.
Yeah.
There's one,
And that's because of the system they have in place.
yeah, I feel if you're going to have taxes and your healthcare is high, I reckon what should be done, even though I think your minimum wage is barely anything.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, ours over here, I think at the moment's $14.75, but then with, I think roughly about a currency exchange before tax, I think that ends up being about, I'd say probably about 10, 12, somewhere in between $10, $12 US.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the main reason why it's so expensive over there is just because of the way the laws over there are written, where it's easier for a company to sue the government over something they don't like, and they can win by it depending on who's sitting on the judge's seat. And that will just
Yeah.
come down to political views, and that's pretty much the way it is.
That's true. I think that with healthcare and stuff, like I said, it being expensive, but at the same time, here in Massachusetts, and I know in some other states too, in the United States, they tax pretty heavy, like your regular tax, like your state and your federal. Now we get slammed with that too. So you work your 40 hours a week, and obviously we don't get paid. We get paid every 2 weeks. So you get your 80 hours, but at the end of it, when you look at it, if you look at your net pay, what you should be getting, okay, they take out a shit ton of money, and
Yeah,
it's crazy how much tax money they actually take from you. And then on top of that, we have to pay for expensive healthcare too. So it's crazy. It's insane. But nothing you can do about it, right? You can't change it. You
yeah.
can't beat the government. So
No, the
it's just
government's
how that goes.
government's the dealer of cards at the poker desk.
Pretty much.
Yeah, no, because
And
pretty much over here, the way it works, I think, depending on what your situation is through employment, whether it's part time or I think whatever your main source of income is what determines how you're taxed. And for me, I'm losing about 150 or 120 to 150 odd dollars depending on what my hours are, and during the week, say if I pick up extra hours, I'll get taxed a wee bit more. Um,
yeah,
but my tax, I'd actually like to know what my tax rate is, because then because I've got the code and everything there, and I just can't be bothered doing the math. But what the average, what the actual percentage is that I get taxed out of my actual income, because you guys, well, getting from what you've said, taxed twice, federal and local, whatever it's called.
a
That
state. Yeah,
state, that that'll end up being what, probably a good almost half of your pay maybe, and then that's not even including the factor in that there's tax on everything you buy, which you guys end up doing at the end of the financial tax year. You got to do all your taxes, where ours, everything's already got tax put on it. Like I think over there for a pack of 20 cigarettes, I think someone from somewhere in the US the other day said it's about $9 to $10 depending on where you go for just a packet of 20. Over here, they've just put a tax. They've increased the tax on it, and just for the cheapest pack of 20s, it's $22.
wow. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean here you can pay a little over $10 a pack here.
yeah, but yeah, in saying that, everything we buy, that's already got the tax in it, and then we pay, I think, another bit of tax on top of that, but it's nothing major. Um, but that automatically comes out just when we pay for it on the spot. So we don't end
Yeah.
up having to do a massive, like, save all the receipts if you have to, sort of. I think that's how. Does it save all the receipts and then count it all up later? How you do your taxes?
You can do that. You can save your receipts, and then at the end of the year you can claim certain things, for expenses or whatever. I haven't done it myself, but I know some people that have, and you can do it. But it's a lot of work. You got to save all the receipts, and you got to do all that shit. So,
Hope the house doesn't
um,
burn down and burn them all.
oh yeah, of course, you don't want that to happen. But yeah, so I think we've covered quite a bit today. Just talking about healthcare and some politics stuff, and just government in general. And I think with the healthcare and some other stuff, we can definitely get another show going and get deeper into that
Yeah,
for the
no,
next
I'd
one.
like to get into a bit more to the to the healthcare, because I reckon, because that will give me a bit of time to do a bit of research and find out which
Yeah,
country it is and how exactly it works. Because pretty much, if you're going to pay taxes, and on my view anyway, if you're going to pay taxes and it sort of just goes what seems like nowhere, there's not really much point. But even if you get paid, you get taxed a shit ton, but it's going somewhere that's going to benefit you if something does happen. I reckon it's the way to go. Not many. I
yeah,
don't think many countries are going to agree with it, but it seems to work over there. And knowing that the tax is going somewhere that's going to help me later on, say if that accident does happen, is one less thing to worry about on the spot. Because if you have something happen, your first worry is pretty much making sure you become right before you even start thinking about the financial cost of it. Whereas I think
oh
over
yeah,
there, you guys sort of, something happens and you delay going to actually getting help. Say you've just like completely broken your arm and probably damaged your spine in some sort of horse riding
yeah,
accident. you guys will probably
And
just
we
walk
tend to,
around for a week or so
yeah,
contemplating, is
we
it worth it?
hesitate. People hesitate because they don't have the money to pay it, and it's sad that it has to be that way because I've done it myself. I've had an injury from lifting, going to the gym, and I hurt myself, and I was out of commission for about 4 months after that. But I didn't go to the hospital for, I don't know, I avoided for at least a month before I went in. But my wife hounded me and hounded me and hounded me until I finally went in because it was getting a little concerning, seeing as it was in my chest and all that stuff. So I didn't really want to take the risk in case I died from something stupid because I wanted to avoid the hospital. But yeah, I mean, I can understand people's mentality and why they avoid it. If you don't have the money and you have to take care of your family, your first initial thought is your family and not having to pay a huge hospital bill.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like I said, we can definitely on the next show, I want to do another show next weekend. Maybe we can do it on Saturday again if you'll be available. Hopefully we can get the three of us on here so we can all give our opinions and kind of just touch on some more stuff as far as healthcare goes. And I also wanted to get into some things about law enforcement and some stuff like that that's kind of been frustrating me, so I want to get that out there. So we can definitely do that. So what I wanted to do before we close it out, I just want to, give you an opportunity to kind of let everybody know about your Twitter so they can check you out on there if they want, or if they want to check you out on YouTube, they can do that too. I'm going to put the link to both of those in the video anyways, but if you want to just go ahead, for the people that don't have YouTube, I'm going to post it on Facebook. You can go ahead and let them know.
Yeah, well, pretty much just on YouTube. I'm just doing a wee bit of gaming commentary stuff. I haven't actually done anything in a wee while. I've been sort of a bit busier in the real world lately, and that's sort of taken a step back. My Twitter is at DisengageNZ, I think. I'll have to have a look. I haven't actually looked at the link in a long time.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yep.
Yeah. So you'll see a face of a guy, and the picture's all blurry, but it makes the reason behind it's fine. But yeah, it's just Disengage NZ. That's there. There'll be some stupid stuff that I post up on there, or a little bit of views on sort of more gaming stuff, but it's nothing really too major. That sort of just is there if I see something interesting and end up talking to someone about a certain thing.
Yeah.
Mainly game scores off the PlayStation, and yeah, YouTube's just wee gaming comms. I'm average at them. I'm still in the learning phase of it. But yeah, let's just see.
So,
this might help me talk a little bit better.
yeah, of course. Everybody needs to get some experience, and that's another thing too for me. This is a good experience as well for what I wanted to do, because this is something I've wanted to do for a long time. So I'm really happy that I'm actually here and I'm doing it and it's happening, and hopefully it will turn into something. And it would be nice to have you on the show again, several times. Maybe you could even just be part of it in general. For the majority of the time. So I think the weekend schedule works for everybody because it's a lot easier. You don't have to, most people don't work on the weekend. Some people do, but most people don't, so it works better. Also works better for the listeners too. So
yeah.
Before we close this out, I just want to thank all you guys for tuning in today, checking out the video and listening to us talk about, politics and healthcare and stuff like that. And hopefully you guys will be looking forward to the next show, which will be next weekend on Saturday. So you guys can look forward to that. We're going to dive into some more healthcare topics and also talk about some law enforcement and whatever else comes to mind. So again, like I said, thank you guys for checking us out. If you have not gone over to the YouTube channel, please do so. The link will be below for you guys to check that out. I'm also going to link Damon's channel and his Twitter, so you guys can check him out as well. Go over there and show him some support. That would be appreciated. And follow us on Twitter at The Harsh Truth, capital PC, and definitely do that, and that would be greatly appreciated. And thank you guys for listening today, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.